Okay, hello everyone. This is RALF DOLOR, a third-year student taking up Bachelor of Physical Education at Negros Oriental State University. So in today's video, I will be discussing to you the grading decision making and the functions of grading. Without further ado, so let's start. Okay, so now let's discuss on the about grading the students, or particularly on grading decision making and functions of grading. So, but before that, assessments and grading are not the same. Generally, the goal of grading is to evaluate individual students' learning and performance. Moreover, assessment goes beyond grading by systematically examining patterns of students' learning across courses and programs and using this information to improve educational practices. So with regards to grading decision making, the factors considered in this decision making of grades are achievement factors in terms of scores from a formal and informal assessment, and non-achievement factors involving students' efforts and behavior, curriculum, and school policy. Okay, so now grading decision making. So in some schools, teachers develop common understanding of what is meant to grade fairly. So as teachers, it is very important that when we give our students grade, it should be fair and just. We cannot just give our students directly without even undergoing some quizzes, exams, or essays, or tests, or whatsoever. These are the things that we should done, because these are the basis or on how we can give grade to our students. Next, for advocates of standards-based grading, highly structured district guidance are recommended. So, of course, in grading also there are guidelines to follow so that we could fairly give grades to our students, or the grades that they deserve. Some districts allow teachers discretion about grading practices. Each teacher develops a personal philosophy of grading that translates into what they do. So, also there are some teachers who actually follow their own strategy of or guidelines on how they grade their students. The next we have now let's proceed to the grading plan, developing a grading plan. So in developing the grading plan, there are also a lot of questions to be considered. First, we have here grading plan for definition. So what meaning should each grade symbol carry? What should failure mean? And for the grade elements, what element or performance should I incorporate in a grade, and what components should I include for the final grade. For the grading philosophy, should the borderline cases be reviewed, or what other factors influence my philosophy of grading? In calculations, how should the grades in a class be distributed, and how should the components of grade be weighted and combined? So these are just some of the questions to be considered in developing a grading plan. So in grading making decisions also, it is very important that teachers understand the different purpose of functions that grades serve, the types of comparison standards that are used, the needs to use method and comparisons that best met the grade's major purpose. So it's very important that teachers are aware of these things so that they can grade their students properly. And also in grading decision making, decisions and judgments are made subjective and intuitive. So meaning there is no single correct procedure or set of rules that standardize professional decision making. Despite the use of grading scale and calculations of score to create a grade, So decisions may seem objective, but they are not. So teachers differ on the meaning of their students' performance. So next, there are a wide range of factors that influence teachers' judgment about grades, and these are the following influences how teacher give judgment about grades. So teaching experience, understanding of the learning context, knowledge of the subject area, personal value and systems. And other thing is to be an effective teacher must understand the issues, making some informed judgment, have confidence in their decisions. So it is very important that the teachers should understand some issues surrounding the students and be confident in their making decisions. Okay, and now let's proceed to the functions of grading. So one of the purpose of grading system is to give feedback to the students so they can make or so they can take charge on their learning and to provide information to all who support them, such as teachers, special educators, parents, and others. So one of the function of grading is to provide feedback, and when students cease to grade with no comment, there is no information about why the grade was earned. The students may be disappointed and be wilder. So as a teachers, it is very important and it is our responsibility that we have to let our students inform and be about their grade so that they could be aware on their status or progress in school. So however, it is simply not feasible to give detailed comments on each assignment or task. Teacher must make many practical judgments to target for intensive feedback. So next is, sometimes feedback can have a negative effect. Too much red ink, too vague. But in general, more detailed, individualized feedback has a positive effect on motivation. Students can make more accurate connections between how they prepared and their performance. So as teachers, we also have to think on the possible effects of giving feedback to our students, but preferably we should prefer on the feedback that is on the positive side so that we could able to encourage and motivate our students to do better in their learning. So an effective teachers learn to give students consistent, detailed, and useful feedback, taking practical constraints into account. So of course, as a teacher, you have to give feedback on their students' learning process or learning progress so that ma-aware po silahang buhaton as a student. So, okay, and grading is also used to provide a basis for comparison to something. In comparison, there are three forms that influence the way grading decisions are made. First, individual student reference, norm reference, standard base. So this distinction boils down to the following questions. When we assign grades, what exactly we are comparing? So these are some important informations of giving grades, or the functions of having grades. So in grading our students, there are a lot of ways or examples on how we could give grades to our students. So one of this is doing written tasks or quizzes. In this form of assessment, we could test what our students have learned during the learning process and what they have understand on the topics that has been delivered by the teacher, and by that we could give assess them and give them grades based on the learnings that they have learned. So another thing is when giving performances, this is where we test their skills and abilities on what they have learned on the class, and such as skills demonstrations, and by that we could assess them and give them grades based on what they have learned on the topic that has been discussed by the teachers. And that's the end of my discussion. I hope you have learned something. Thank you, and God bless us all.